And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special segment and when we have the Daily India report and the local news update. And don't forget that at 10 a.m. we'll have the very special interview with Ellyse Perry. Well, right now, getting on with the news for today, let's take a look at what's making headlines. First of all, the epidemiologist looks at what we can expect post-COVID.
A new report from the University of Melbourne suggests a cautious approach to reopening the nation's two major states is justified as long as certain restrictions stay in place. Tony Blakely is a professor in epidemiology and public health specialist at the University of Melbourne. He joins us now. Tony, good morning. When you mean cautious,
morning, Michael.
How cautious does this modelling suggest those two states, New South Wales and Victoria, need to be?
Well, our modelling sort of helps those states, but it's more thinking about the rest of us and everybody through into next year. And what the modelling shows that at 80% of just adults vaccinated, life won't be tickety-boo next year. We'll need to do more than that. And so vaccinating down to 5+-year-olds, and as you just heard, the trials are coming through on that, and maintaining some minimum public health and social measures like density limits and hospitality, people like me only going to work 1 or 2 days a week, that sort of thing, will get the health burden down really quite well. But the problem is that we would still need to lean on or use lockdowns 1, 4, 14% of time. So we need to innovate. And the other thing that this modelling I think is important is it shows that if you reach in there and you change a few things like what would be mass rapid antigen testing or ventilation, improved air filtration in buildings, we do get good control. So I think the key message out of this is, yes, vaccinate as high as you can, but we need to innovate in other aspects of our society to make next year much better.
And have that, interestingly, that target, you're aiming for 90% on this modelling, not just 16-year-old plus, but the entire population. So considering at the moment that 80% threshold is 16 plus, but taken in the broader population, that figure is closer to 64%, which suggests we need to do a whole lot more on the vaccination front.
Yes, and once we get to 80% with these other innovations and keeping using masks well, we'll be okay. But we can be even better by just keeping on lifting that vaccination coverage. And I believe that sometime early next year probably we will get to 90% as people see their friends get sick and get incentivised, as people realise that if they're going to go to the pub or they're going to go to the community sports centre, they need to be vaccinated. And we will continually see those vaccine rates lift. The next thing about vaccines though, and you don't want to be always bringing bad news, is that we're seeing in other countries they're waning in their effectiveness. So a big challenge for us next year, we will work our way through it, is boosting the whole population to cover for that waning immunity. So we've got a lot of water to go under the bridge, but the key thing about this report is saying that it's not just vaccines, there are other innovations we can do and we can make next year considerably better.
You mentioned masks in this modelling. Realistically, Tony Blakely, how long do you see mask wearing staying at least indoors as we head towards the end of this year and into 2022?
Look, I think masks are a feature of our society for some time to come. We don't need to be wearing them outside when we're walking the dog and we're separate from people once we get up to 80% vaccination, but when we're in the supermarket, when we are in the bus or the train, when we are in the lift at work, we should have those masks on because it just dampens that transmission whilst we walk our way out of this pandemic, whilst we are waiting for the better vaccines to come on board, and yes, inevitably many of us to get natural infection to boost the vaccine coverage as well.
So that means mask wearing based on all of those things, and as you say, waiting for booster shots, mask wearing continuing well into, if not all of 2022, indoors?
Oh, look, I think it'll be a feature of our society. I think in those busy, certainly on public transport and in supermarkets, those types of settings, I think we can expect to see masks for most of next year.
Okay, and the probability you mentioned, it's pretty small in this modelling, but still the probability of at least, I guess, localised lockdowns, if in the worst case, if it was needed to combat local outbreaks.
Yeah, local outbreaks. So in the modelling, when you get to 80% and you've got the children vaccinated and you've got a floor of public health and social measures, we still see 14% of the time you'd need lockdown. Now, I don't want to live in lockdown 14% of the time, so that's why we're saying that we need to innovate and bring some of these other measures through, like better ventilation, air filtration in buildings, mass rapid antigen testing, phone apps that actually work to assist the contact tracers when the numbers are high. These are the types of things we need to bring on, as well as good vaccines.
Lots to think about. Tony Bakley, thanks for joining us this morning.
Pleasure. I hope that was useful.
And thank you very much for that report, and it is quite a good observation, because that is what's going to be happening, further down the track as we move along. Well, moving along, let's go to Melbourne, where we saw that big clash of police with the anti-lockdown protesters.
On the weekend, thousands of people turned out to multiple anti-lockdown protests across the country to fight against COVID restrictions. Melbourne's turned violent, with protesters throwing punches and bottles at police, sending 6 officers to hospital. Shane Patton is the Chief Commissioner of Victoria Police. Commissioner, we appreciate your time. These protests seem quite well orchestrated when they happen. Do police know who's behind them?
Look, Lee, we have a fair idea of a range of people who organise these. We do everything we can. It's a range of different issue-motivated groups, though, and they're very much leaderless, if I could say that. These recent ones we've seen, very much leaderless.
Do you have any sense of how many of the attendees are violent conspiracy theory types who are using COVID opportunistically versus people who are ordinary Melburnians fed up with lockdowns?
Yeah, we certainly on this occasion and the other protest we had on the 21st of last month, we've seen a lot of young, angry men who are using this as an opportunity to attack police. That's basically what we're seeing. It's not about the normal protesters who we would often have in the past come along. And on this occasion, on the weekend, we didn't have mums and dads as such. These were angry young men who are intent on confronting police.
There was a video that showed a police officer shove a person to the ground and then capsicum spray them in the face and walk on. What investigations have occurred into that?
We've certainly tried to make contact with that woman. We have made contact with a family member. At this stage, she hasn't made a complaint, but we are following through and investigating that matter. It's very concerning footage, obviously, and it's footage that we'll investigate fully, and it will be oversighted by the Independent Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission.
Is the force that was used there excessive?
Oh, look, I don't want to speak about particular incidents, Lee. That is, as I said, it's confronting, it's concerning, and it's something that we will thoroughly investigate. I've had alarming reports, police members getting threats, death threats, and we get those often, and unfortunately it comes with the territory. But we've had one police officer who's been identified and for lack of a better word, outed and named in social media as being the police officer who was engaged or involved with that woman who was pushed to the ground. The protesters, or the persons who've done that, nominated this police officer, have got the wrong police officer, and he has been subject to numerous threats. My advice would simply be, leave this matter to go through an appropriate investigation. It's not appropriate that protesters or other people involved in that riot go out and name someone, and on this occasion they've done it incorrectly. Has
that police officer been moved into any sort of protective accommodation, or has he been given any security?
We've taken assessments, as we do with all threats against serving police officers, but I'm not going to disclose what those activities are. But I do reiterate, the threats should never have been made in the first instance, but they've been made incorrectly, and they've named the wrong officer. So my message is
that they've made the wrong the allegation with the wrong officer, and death threats are coming on with the social media and all those things. So, in a scene like that, where police are at hand on the duty of call, and they're trying to control everything, they can't always be guided. Oh, okay, this guy's rushing at me. Let me get the rule book out and look at how can I handle him. I should use this much force. Well, they have to think on the spur of the moment and do whatever. But of course, we have to know that they're doing that so to protect the wider community. Of course, excessive force is never applicable. But I mean, they need to use. But on the spur of the moment, sometimes in self-defense and things, people, and especially police, as the first at that point in time, do things, certain things that might not go down well with others. While if you look at the wider community, all the other people who were there attacking the police, was that correct? So there's always the two sides of the coin. It's a balancing act, and the police, as far as I'm concerned, were attending to a call and they were on duty. Well, what has all this resulted, and what's the opinion now from master builders and the union? As we know, there was a protest outside union building. Union many times have been charged with having used a little bit of heavy hand, as to say. It's there to protect their members and their members' right, which is quite okay. But many of the members, even though they need to be members to be on a lot of building sites, many times they are not happy. But of course, they all know that if they are not together, their rights might be exploited as well. Here's a report from Master Builders.
It is a bitter blow for the vast majority of building construction industry businesses that have continued to do the right thing over the past 18 months. And let me be clear, it's particularly disheartening for those that have taken the time to get vaccinated as well. It's very sad for many clients that are going to miss out too, but we do understand the position that the government is in, we can see though that there is frustration out there, particularly after announcing the roadmap to COVID normal and the day after our industry shut down. So there is a lot of frustration today here in Victoria.
You're saying that the industry has been doing the right thing, but it wasn't just the protests that made the government pull this rein. It was also, they said, the transmission that had been ongoing, and that there were signs that the industry had not been doing the right thing. We've seen it with the case numbers.
That's right. Look, we've been in constant contact with the Victorian government about those recent outbreaks on construction sites. Our industry has done a magnificent job over the last year and a half. I was just watching some of the news about the virulence of the Delta strain, and every single industry is struggling with that right now. And we do support those compliance checks that the government have introduced, and it's absolutely vital that all of those organisations that are not doing the right thing are held to account, because they do risk our whole industry being completely shut down. Obviously it's bad enough that we've got only a few sections of our industry that are shut down this time with regards to those LGA areas, but there are many others that can continue to work in some way, shape or form. But yes, there have been lots of cases in more recent times, and we're working with the government on those compliance issues again.
Okay, so the unions say that the government's been heavy-handed with this. They didn't get enough notice of the mandatory vaccines. Is 2 weeks going to fix it? Because in 2 weeks, all the workers have to have shown they've had at least one dose. Is that target going to be met, or is this stoppage going to continue, do you think?
Look, the government has given us very strict targets for those COVID vaccinations, and they've now given the tools that we need to hit those targets with the mandatory vaccinations as well. Let me be really clear, without mandatory vaccinations in our industry, it would have been extremely challenging for employers, particularly to get their employees back to work, and for our industry to fully reopening. And that's why, we've been talking about the mandatory vaccination with the state government. We do support that mandatory vaccination.
Can it be done in 2 weeks, Rebecca?
We believe that it can be done in 2 weeks. There are many, many people out there in our industry that have already been vaccinated. Many of them have all been double jabbed. And in fact, some of them are actually frustrated now that they're not going to be able to get back onto work, onto site. So we've actually got double vaccinated building construction industry workers that are ready to go back to work right now. So we're absolutely sure that we're going to be able to get all of that done in the next 2 weeks.
done in the next 2 weeks, and of course I think it was a good move by the government to make it mandatory, close the working sites and ask everyone to be vaccinated before they get back to work, and because if our industry does not behave itself, then these are the kind of moves that the government has to take on. But the sad part is there were many in there who have already had the vaccinations, at least 2 or at least 1, some had both the vaccinations done. Now in the next clip we see how heartwarming to see our indigenous kids urging everyone to get vaccinated. Good on them.
We're just checking the sheep and water troughs for pop.
13-year-old Kalaya West is tending to the sheep for her pop near their home in Dubbo. When Kalaya caught COVID-19 at school, 6 of her family members also became infected, including her grandfather.
It was pretty scary though too, because we didn't know what was going to happen.
Kalaya has now had her first COVID jab and is reunited with her family. But she has a clear message for other First Nations children.
Stay safe, because this is a real event, and it's not playing around.
While many states are prepared to ease restrictions when 70% and 80% of people are fully vaccinated, those targets don't include under 16s. With Indigenous children more likely to have pre-existing health conditions, experts say that's a major concern.
It goes back to the need to have 85 to 90% of the entire Aboriginal population that's eligible to be vaccinated in order to protect our younger mob.
17-year-old Trey Taylor got his jab at Kimberwali, a Western Sydney Aboriginal youth centre repurposed as a vaccination clinic.
I'm in school in Year 10. I just want to got the jab so I can get my apprenticeship.
The ability and the space to have open discussions about vaccinations is key, according to mental health specialists.
Support from family and friends and the health sector, and getting the information from the qualified professionals.
Decisions vital to reducing the spread in vulnerable communities. Shani Wellington, ABC.
And that is a wonderful news there that the Indigenous community rising to the occasion, and of course the young ones calling out to everyone to get vaccinated. Isn't that wonderful? Well, before we go into the Daily India report, and there's some wonderful news coming out of India this morning as Ankita joins us. Before that, a message from our sponsors, and as we mentioned yesterday, you too can be, or your business can be a sponsor of these segments, or you could have your ads placed in these segments as well. Right now, here's the message from our sponsor for this segment.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is their world. And don't forget that tomorrow at 10 a.m. Usha Chandra will be here in the studios discussing real estate updates and bringing to you everything real estate. So that is a hosted segment. Your business could be a host of one of the segments as well. And if you like to have your ads placed within the news segments, that too can be arranged. Please contact Rajni from our office to arrange that. Well, right now it's time to go to our Daily India Report. Remember, Daily India Report we bring to you by the courtesy of PI, our TV, exclusively presented for Australian Indian Radio from Tuesday through till Saturday. So here's our Daily India Report. With that, let's welcome Ankita.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, Punjab state of India gets the first Dalit Sikh Chief Minister. After a lot of infighting, Charanjit Singh Channi took oath on 20th September. In a master stroke, the Congress party on September 19th announced a new Chief Minister of the state of Punjab because of serious internal confrontations in the party. A three-time MLA from Chamkaur Sahib area, Channi was inducted as the new Congress leader. This happened a day after MIFT former Chief Minister Captain Amrinder Singh resigned. Channi is the first scheduled caste Chief Minister declared by the Congress High Command. Channi was Technical Education and Industrial Training Minister in the Amrinder Singh government. Earlier, he has also served as the leader of opposition in the Punjab Vidhan Sabha from 2015 to 2016. He belongs to the Ramdasiya Sikh community. Channi's father had to struggle a lot to bring his family to the level of economic security for which he had to migrate to Malaysia. He returned and settled in Kharar town, starting a business of a tent house where Channi also worked as a tent boy. Channi went on to complete his matriculation from Khalsa Higher Secondary School in Kharar, where he received free education thanks to his gifted talent in the sports. Channi took oath at the Raj Bhavan in Chandigarh on September 20th. Sukhjinder Singh Randhawa and Om Prakash Soni took oath as Deputy Chief Ministers along with Channi. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi was also present at the ceremony. Channi's appointment came after hectic lobbying by the Congress leaders with an unusual Sikh versus Hindu CM narrative thrown into the mix. Several leaders said the appointment of a Dalit in a state with nearly 32% Dalit population was a good political move. As India emerges from COVID-19, India is aggressively reaching out to friendly countries. Indian ministers welcomed two strategic partners, the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia and Serbia. India is intensifying its foreign affairs dialogues with friendly countries and visits to India by foreign ministers. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on September 19th held warm and fruitful discussions with his Serbian counterpart Nikola Selakovic, and both sides agreed to take forward their long-standing cooperation, especially in the economic sector. The Serbian Foreign Minister also held a meeting with the Indian Minister of State for External Affairs Meenakshi Lekhi. The volume of bilateral trade was $142.7 million in 2016, which increased to $198.5 million in 2017, according to official data. The bilateral trade in 2018 was recorded at $214.8 million that comprised Indian exports of $202.6 million. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabian Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud held productive discussions with Indian Housing and Urban Affairs Minister Hardeep Puri. Minister of State for External Affairs Meenakshi Lekhi and the Indian Ambassador to Riyadh Yusuf Saeed were also present at the dinner meeting. Prince Faisal called on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He is also likely to meet National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. During talks with External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, both sides had a useful exchange of views on Afghanistan, the Gulf and the Indo-Pacific, besides bilateral relations. Though India and most of the Gulf kingdoms have had centuries of traditional trading ties, political relations were never warm. Successive governments in India felt that Saudi Arabia was an ally of ARC for Pakistan and therefore did not invest time and energy in cultivating Riyadh. But in the last 2 decades, with the winds of change blowing across the world, both New Delhi and Gulf kingdoms broke out the mold and began exploring new engagements. A US judge has vacated a Trump-era proposed change to the H-1B visa selection process. This has come as a big relief to Indian IT companies. A US court has rejected the Trump-era proposed change to the current H-1B visa system. This judgment has been welcomed by Indian IT giants. The current system for selecting applications for consideration is a hybrid of first come, first served and a lottery. Judge Jeffrey S. White of the U.S. District Court for the North District of California vacated a Trump-era H-1B cap selection regulation on the grounds that then acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf was not lawfully serving in his role, and at the time the regulation was promulgated. The judge granted the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's motion for summary judgment in the lawsuit challenging the regulation. According to the court order uploaded by the Chamber's Litigation Center, the H-1B visa is a non-immigrant visa that allows U.S. companies to employ foreign workers in specialty occupations that require theoretical or technical expertise. Technology companies depend on it to hire tens of thousands of employees each year from countries like India and China. Indian Minister of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan inaugurated the first Girmitia conference virtually, heaping praise on the Indian diaspora. Indian Minister of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan on September 18th inaugurated the first Girmitia conference organized by the India Foundation with support of the Overseas Indian Affairs Division of the Ministry of External Affairs. V. Muralidharan had also invited the Indian diaspora to be an integral part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav in their countries of residence. The MOS said that the Indian diaspora has been a proud torchbearer of Indian culture and traditions. He also insisted that it has been instrumental in assimilating the Indian culture to various nations all over the world. He said that the Girmitia conference would entail more linkages with the Indian diaspora and result in a beneficial relationship between India and the respective Girmitia countries, including political, economic and people-to-people ties. Indian diaspora forms a substantial percentage of the population among the Girmitia countries. Bollywood actor Sonu Sood and associates are alleged to be involved in Rs 200 million tax evasion and the violation of the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Bollywood actor Sonu Sood and his associates were involved in Rs 200 million tax evasion and violation of the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act (FCRA) while raising funds from abroad, according to the Income Tax Department. Raids on multiple locations linked to the actor continued for the third consecutive day on 19 September. An official statement issued by the Central Board of Direct Taxes did not name the actor, but sources in the department said the raids were conducted at the premises of Sonu Sood, whose popularity swelled after his charity work during the COVID-19 pandemic. The IT department also claimed that the actor's charity foundation raised funds from overseas donors using a crowdfunding platform in violation of FCRA rules. Raids were also conducted on a Lucknow-based real estate firm with which the film star partnered and allegedly invested black money. The statement said the search and seizure operations were conducted at 28 premises spread over Mumbai, Lucknow, Kanpur, Jaipur, Delhi and Gurgaon. The main modus operandi followed by the actor had been to route his unaccounted income in the form of bogus unsecured loans from many fake entities. Investigations so far have revealed the use of 20 such entries, the providers of which on examination have accepted on oath to have given bogus accommodation entries. According to the IT department, the actor's charity foundation started on July 21, 2020, collected donations to the tune of Rs 180.94 million from April 2021 till date, of which it spent around Rs 10.9 million towards various relief work, and the balance of Rs 170 million has been found lying unutilized in the bank account. The 10-day-long Ganesh festival culminated with the immersion of the idols in India. The 10-day Ganesh festival culminated with the immersion of Lord Ganesha idols taking place in Mumbai, Pune, Nashik and other parts of Maharashtra. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the immersion ceremony is taking place with restrictions on crowd gathering and processions. The state government has allowed only 10 fully vaccinated members from public pandals to be part of the group who would be carrying idols to the immersion spots. Amid the chants of Ganpati Bappa Moria, Pujya Varshi Lavkarya, devotees of Lord Ganesha are bidding adieu to their favorite god with the conclusion of the 10-day festival. The immersion ceremony is low-key in nature and people were dissuaded from visiting many immersion spots. Adequate deployment of police force was made across the city and at the immersion spots to prevent any untoward incident. Bollywood khiladi Akshay Kumar's starrer Bell Bottom has taken over the digital arena as it released on the OTT platform. Bollywood superstar Akshay Kumar's starrer Bell Bottom swept the digital arena with the best reception among all the movies and web series that have been in the running. Bell Bottom, released in theatres 4 weeks back, is now storming the OTT space. There was huge anticipation around the film, but it did not find the right distribution in theatres as Maharashtra cinemas remained shut. There was 50% occupancy allowed across most of the country with no night shows. Analysts are expecting a record start for the film. OTT numbers are expected to see a constant rise in momentum in its first weekend. That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much for that report. And obviously, Ankita wasn't there today. She might be back tomorrow. Well, it is wonderful news to see that Punjab once again is stabilizing and that the new Chief Minister has been appointed. We'll keep an eye on the situation and bring to you updates as they happen. Well, it's a goodbye from me from this segment. Don't forget that we are back at 10 a.m. with that daily interview for today. And we look at the cricket and women's cricket and Commonwealth Bank and their ongoing support for the same. Until then, it's goodbye from me.